Barry, some of the risks are pretty difficult to discuss. It's not happy-go-lucky on this. Some important things we need to really talk through. Things like a member of your family suffering a catastrophic illness, or we have a medical emergency. Those are definitely on your list of major retirement risks. And can you tell us about some of the ways to navigate around some of those scenarios?
Well, big issues, Ralph. In fact, more than 500,000 Americans file for bankruptcy each year just due to medical bills. So a healthcare emergency or catastrophic illness of any type, or even an accident, can knock you off your feet, both physically but also financially. So you need to have a plan for healthcare costs, and many people don't. And even if they have it, they don't understand their coverage options. For example, Medicare, that confuses a lot of people in retirement. So you need to understand your options for long-term care coverage, for your Medicare coverage. And speaking of long-term care, it's interesting to note that 70% of adults, that's 7 out of 10 people, age 65 and older, are going to need some type of long-term care at some point during their retirement years. So this is something we need to take care of.
And it's estimated to be at least $300,000 of long-term health care bills. Is that a
For the
solid
average
estimate?
family, they should plan on spending $300,000 on health care in their retirement. That's correct.
So do you have that? Do you have that ready to go? Another major risk on our list today is the loss of a spouse. So losing your husband or wife can be devastating, Barry, emotionally. There's also the physical aspect of it and the financial aspect of it. So how do you help us deal with that financially, the loss of a spouse?
Well, again, if you're married, the chances that both of you will pass away at the same time are very slim. And so you need to think about this from both angles. If you were to pass away first, Ralph, you don't want to leave your family scrambling to figure out what to do. So you need to plan now if that's the case. Now, if you instead are the survivor, well, you don't want to be making big financial decisions in the midst of your grieving. So again, the solution is plan now. Make sure that your spouse and everyone knows where all the money is, where all the accounts are, and how to access everything. Think about your passwords in that particular situation. The loss of a spouse means that your income will likely be reduced. At the very least, you're going to lose your spouse's Social Security. But the bills aren't going to be cut in half. They're probably going to be about the same. And so when you lose your spouse, you also have a tax issue because you go from married filing jointly to being a single filer on your taxes. And single people more quickly fall into a higher tax bracket than married people, even if they have the same income level. Here's an example. If you're married and you make $90,000, you fall into the 12% tax bracket. But if you're single, you'd be in the 22% tax bracket. So higher taxes after the loss of spouse are a really, really big issue.
Barry, I'd like to ask a question about, is it a typical situation for the husband to be in charge of working with you on the financial planning, the big picture, the long range picture, and the wives are really good with the budgets and handling the checkbook and making sure either online or getting the checks in the mail that the bills are paid on time? Can you talk about the role of a husband and wife in dealing with money in their financial and family situation? And do you always meet with couples? You don't just meet with the husband or just meet with the wife, do you?
Well, no, if you're married, what I tell people is if you're married, you have to bring your spouse if you're going to see me, unless you're preparing to go through divorce. And
Right.
people, so if I'm speaking to a crowd and I say that, people always chuckle. But no, we definitely want to talk to both parties because the information we're communicating applies to both of them. And one of them is most likely going to be the survivor. And so it's important that everybody knows the money, everybody knows where it is, everybody recognizes the voice and the language and the planning process and knows what it looks like. Now, you asked the question, does the husband more often take the lead or the wife more often take the lead? Well, it might, when you consider the population I deal with and the age demographic, which is really baby boomers, maybe the husband is in charge a little more often, let's call it 60% of the time. But when I see younger people, it's definitely a split responsibility between the two of them. And even with some of my boomers, some of the times the husband sits back and says, whatever the wife says will be the answer. So it's hard to really sort that out. When it comes to keeping the books, the checkbook and so forth, I would say the wife does that a little more often. And that's the way Kelly and I do it at home, in fact.
Yeah, a little more hands-on and, as we call it, the day-to-day operation of the firm.
Yes.
Yeah, the wife would handle that. But that's very interesting with Gen Xers or baby boomers. You're seeing definitely 50-50, the husband and the wife are equal partners in pulling the weight of that load of planning their financial future.
And the younger people get, the more often you see the wife actually earning a bigger income than the husband. That happens some with baby boomers, but not nearly as often. So I think the future is going to be a very split responsibility.
And by the way, my wife makes more than me, and I do not have a problem with that. I hope you, as a husband and wife, you don't have any problem with that either. That the wife makes more.
I grew up with farmers, and what they used to say about farmers is the surest way to be financially successful on the farm is to have a wife who's a school teacher or a nurse with a good paycheck. If you like this content, please follow and subscribe. And for more information, please look in the description below.